Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished leader from Washington, D.C., USA, Mr. Mahan Tavakoli. Mahan, welcome to the show.
Ashutosh, really excited to be with you. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Thank you. Mahan is the Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Leadership Ventures and Host Partnering Leadership. He was earlier with Dale Carnegie Training. He's an author, and all of you know that I'm very partial to authors. And he's been recognized, awarded, and felicitated several times. So, Mahan, let's talk leadership today. Let me start by asking you, are leaders born or trained / made?
Ashutosh, I'm a big believer in the fact that there is a spectrum rather than binary decisions in all of these cases, including with leadership, in that we want to know whether they're born or they're made. There is an element to each that we have to admit. So there are factors that contribute to it, that where people are born, some of the capabilities they're born with do influence it. However, those are outside of our control. We do have a significant amount of control over our own leadership. So one of the things I love about the podcast that you do and your approach is that you're constantly learning about leadership.
Correct.
The best leaders, the most effective ones, are the ones that do that. There have been so many examples of people that I've seen over the years that have had much of the initial capability, but have not built on it, therefore have not become great leaders. So to your question, yes, there are some factors outside of our control that we are born with that impact leadership, but the biggest part is what we do and how we develop our leadership. So the biggest part can be developed.
Very interesting. And you spent time with Dale Carnegie, and that's an amazingly global brand name. What makes a good leader?
Ashutosh, in my belief, one of the most important elements of effective leadership is what Satya Nadella also said, is being a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all.
Okay.
So an understanding that we have to constantly embody that learning.
Yeah.
Along with that, the other critical factor in leadership is the recognition that we all have big blind spots, therefore constantly trying to reduce our blind spots. So I find those are two critical aspects as people try to develop their leaderships. Being a learn-it-all and trying to reduce their blind spots with proper feedback from trusted advisors and sources around them.
Very interesting. I've often asked this question from several different kinds of leaders on my podcast, that what kind of a leader are you? And I get some very different terms, like I'm a participative leader, I'm a listening leader, I'm a transformational leader, I love to delegate, I love to include, etc., etc. What is your perspective on different types of leadership?
I believe different types of people are capable at different types of leadership. That said, there are different situations that call for different types of leaders. So right now, many people are familiar with the Russian incursion into Ukraine.
Correct.
And Zelensky is being hailed as a great hero of Ukrainian people.
Yep.
But a person like Zelensky in a different type of environment would not have been seen as a great leader necessarily. This situation has called for some of his capabilities. Examples like whether it's Churchill or Gandhi or Martin Luther King, you see whether on historical levels or from a business perspective, organizations like Pepsi having Indira Nooyi, or transformational leaders at IBM like Lou Gerstner, there are different leadership capabilities. And when those are matched with the right moment in time, that's when the leaders become the heroic leaders that lead the transformation of the organization or their communities or society.
Amazing, amazing. And you work with a lot of leaders. What are some of the leadership challenges people face, and how have you addressed some of these? And please share some examples or anecdotes without names, of course.
Yeah, the biggest challenge, Ashutosh, is what I consistently see is that with greater experience and as we move up in status in organizations, our blind spots actually grow because people are more careful with the kind of feedback they give us, and we become more convinced that we have the answers. So there is a leader that I'm working with, a CEO, and initially when having conversations with him, like almost every other leader, he said, every meeting I sit in, I encourage my people to give me feedback. I'm really open. So when we were talking about these blind spots, he said, I'm really open. You can ask people anything you want. We are in sync. They consistently give me the kind of feedback they want. So we went through a 360 process, which I'm a big fan of if done well, not necessarily the way organizations sometimes do it across the board. And he was shocked. He was absolutely shocked with the feedback that he got because it was so different from his own initial perception. Okay. I had to work him through with the feedback. They say people go through the 4 stages of grief: denial, anger, rationalization, finally acceptance. He was at the anger stage for quite a while because the feedback totally ran counter to his self-perception. Had to work with him through the fact that people's perception of reality is reality to them. So if they believe that they are not able to be as candid with you, you are not open to their feedback, then that's their reality. You need to be able to change their reality. So that's what we worked on. And not only did his 360 feedback improve, within the senior leadership team, they have a much more psychologically safe environment, which is an environment that allows people to challenge each other without feeling hurt. The challenging is more on the intellectual level rather than a social level.
Right.
So it's understanding that the further up we move up in life in organizations and the more experience we have, the more convinced we become that we are open, we know it, and need to really challenge our blind spots.
Fascinating. And yet, Mahan, there are these 2 terms which are used a lot now, which is servant leadership and selfless leadership, which to me is really managing one's ego. At leadership levels, how does one manage one's ego?
Is really hard, Ashutosh. So you're absolutely right.
Right.
We all have egos, and when our egos are threatened, those are the times when we close up, whether it is to learning or to other individuals. It is very hard. However, in working with the most effective leaders that I've seen, they are the people that end up having the manage their egos by understanding that they know a lot less than they think they know. So it's an ongoing challenge. I love the book by Ryan Holiday. It's called Ego is the Enemy.
Correct.
And he shares a lot of great examples of how ego gets in the way of both our own personal fulfillment and accomplishment and in leadership. So you're absolutely right. It is a huge challenge. And the interesting thing with it is the people typically with the biggest ego are the ones that don't think they have much of an ego.
Absolutely.
So that's why a lot of times the feedback from external sources and being open to it is really important. as we try to become the kind of leader that you talk about, that doesn't let ego get in the way of being effective in relationships and guiding and leading other people.
What a great response. Thank you. My next question to you, Mahan, is that culture impacts leadership, across countries. I have worked with different cultures in different countries. And there is a very strong cultural impact on the kind of leader you tend to become, or the cultural impact on the way you react to your leader. I'd love to get your perspective and your thoughts.
Absolutely, Ashutosh. Our upbringing, the cultural environment we are in, even the household we are raised in. So not just the culture of the community or the country, that cultural impact has an influence on how we treat other people, what we believe with respect to trusting in the environment or in the community. So the initial culture that a person grows up in and comes from has an impact and an influence. That said, we do take on new cultures and new capabilities, which is why I believe organizations also have a culture and can intentionally nurture a positive culture the way they want to. I love what Seth Godin says. He says his definition of culture is people like us do things like this.
Well said.
So, yes, growing up in a certain family, we would say people like us do things like this. Yes, there are cultural elements in a country where, in many instances, people say people like us from this culture and country do things like this. But there are also very strong cultural elements in organizations where people say people like us in this organization do things like this. So it's important to keep in mind that while there are cultural influences that come from family, environment, country, and other factors, there are also clear influences that can be nurtured for organizations to have a unique culture of their own.
Fascinating. So, Mahan, you also do a lot of work with, large companies, and you support leadership in transformation. For my viewers and listeners, help us understand the kind of work that you do. And an example or an anecdote would be very, very welcome.
The biggest challenge that I find and what I tackle, Ashutosh, with organizations is the challenge of alignment and collaboration to actually execute effectively on organizational plans and strategy. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I was working with an organization and started working with an organization. Initially, what they wanted us to go through was a strategic planning process with the senior leadership team. We went through the strategic planning process, and the CEO at one point pulled me aside and said, you know what, one of my frustrations is we go through these same conversations over and over again. And what ends up happening is the organization, we don't execute on and we don't follow through on a lot of these great plans and great thoughts that we come up with. So what we worked with them on, Ashutosh, is based on the objectives and key results process that John Doerr has also popularized through his book, Measure What Matters. Google initially embraced, and a lot of then Silicon Valley companies, and then has spread throughout the world, which is aligning the organization with clear objectives and key results so everyone can focus in on executing that strategy and measuring that execution. So as a result, what has happened is a couple of things. First of all, the organization that I'm working with was able to pivot very quickly when the pandemic hit, because they had very clear objectives for the teams. Therefore, they weren't as concerned with people going into a remote work environment. Post-pandemic, tracking software and everything else, those sales went up. Now, with the hybrid work, a lot of CEOs want their teams to come back into the office.
Right.
Because in many instances, they don't know, or they feel like they don't know whether people are working and producing results. With the objective and key results process that we implemented, there is no need to know whether people are in the office or not, whether they choose to work from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. or from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or a few hours during the day. It's the outcomes that matter, the outcomes that are measured. So that is the transformation for the organization, where when the senior leadership team gets together to talk about strategy and plans, they know that this will be executed rather than another great plan to be revisited in a quarter or a year and wonder what happened with all these great intentions.
Thank you. Great response. My next question to you, Mahan, is that you must be working with leaders across different kinds of specializations, if I can use the term. I'd love to get your perspective on how does leadership differ in the corporate world, the government, the social sector, and across genders?
So one of the interesting things, Ashutosh, is initially leaders in all kinds of organizations come up with reasons and excuses why leadership in their sector or their size company within the sector or the companies on their street is different than everyone else.
Correct.
So in many instances, people feel like, well, this might work for others, but for me, and then fill in the blank reasons and excuses.
Correct.
It is very different. One of the things that I've seen, and I have clients that are government agencies, not quasi-government or quasi-government organizations, organizations that are small SaaS startups to very large for-profit Fortune 100 companies. In the vast majority of cases, the leadership challenges are very similar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So 20% of it is the specifics that are different based on the organization or the size of the organization. The 80%, the vision setting for the team or for the organization, the aligning everyone, the motivating people to pursue that vision. A lot of those capabilities are very much the same.
Okay.
And much of what is lacking in the leaders is the same. At the end of the day, it comes to a lot of individual capabilities because especially with respect to much of what's happening in the world and with the faster pace of change and with the greater technology, the answers lie in the collaboration of teams and groups.
Correct.
So the capability of leaders more than ever is to enable individuals to collaborate effectively together and produce results. So I see a lot more similarities, Ashutosh, than I see differences with respect to leadership capabilities.
Fantastic. I have time for two more questions. My next question, Mahan, is with regard to the younger generation of leaders who are now coming into the corporate world or in different parts of the work lives, which are the millennials and the Gen Zs. And every time I've interacted with some of these young people, I always see a breath of fresh air. They come with such different perspectives. I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on how are they reacting to leadership? And are they any different from people of my vintage?
The exciting thing about new generations, Ashutosh, is they look at things with fresh perspectives and
Right.
new eyes. So one of the beautiful things I noticed when my wife and I had kids, as my girls were growing up, they were asking questions about their environments then that the two of us were not asking. So as simple as, why do the squirrels that we have in our yard, why do they bury the nut, right? Will they be able to find the nut or not?
Yes.
So simple questions that kids would ask that in some instances we had not even thought about the answers to. So in the work environments, the younger generations are asking questions. Now, what I find is they're asking deeper, more meaning-driven questions than have ever been asked before, at least in the past couple of generations.
Correct.
Right now, this generation is asking for purpose and meaning. They don't want to just go to work to produce widgets. They want to understand what impact does this have on the consumers or customers and other stakeholders, on our community, on the environment. They want a sense of meaning and purpose. And I find that truly inspiring because that is forcing organizations to also be more purpose-driven. So the accountability system now is no longer just the shareholders, which unfortunately has been the case for the past 40, 50 years.
Correct.
The employees, most especially the younger generation that has come into the workforce, are the ones that are holding their organizations accountable for purpose.
Well said.
So I find inspiration in the questions they're asking because they are deep questions about meaning and purpose.
Well said. Well said. And I completely agree with what you're saying. And Mahan, my last question to you is, and this is for all the people who will be listening to our conversation, what would you say are 3 lessons based on all your experience and our conversation? What would you say are 3 lessons that you would want our viewers and listeners to take away?
I want everyone to embody what I've mentioned, which is being a learn-it-all rather than a know-it-all. And by listening to your podcast, to a certain extent, they are showing that they are eager to learn.
Correct.
With the accelerating pace of change, we need to learn at a faster pace. So first and foremost, consistently and constantly prioritize your own learning. The second aspect of it is, in many instances, we end up stressing about, worrying about things beyond our control. I like Stoic philosophy and the belief that we need to focus on what we can control. That reduces a lot of stress and anxiety in life. And finally, to look for meaning and purpose in all that you do.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, our fulfillment comes from making a difference for other people. We gain a lot more satisfaction and joy in our lives by helping elevate others. So reflect on how you can do that in your life. You will both help other people and elevate them, but also lead a richer and more fulfilling life for yourself. So make sure you're a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. Focus on what you can control and help elevate others, make a difference in other people's lives.
Amazing. What a phenomenal set of 3 messages at the end. Mahan, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. I love this comment learn it all, not know it all. I think it's a very, very powerful phrase which everyone must remember and learn. Uh, Thank you for speaking to me about your journey as a leader, your journey as a strategic as a person who helps organizations to strategize leadership. Thank you for talking to me about different forms of leadership and how important ego is and how important culture is. I mean, I think these are some amazing inputs you've given to me and to all our viewers and listeners. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.